As we're waiting for the actual speaker, I've got ChatGPT here ready to take all your questions on AI.
So who wants to start?
We're
going to experience AI in our own way.
We can experience AI, we can experience GPT 3.5, and we can also compare and contrast that with GPT 4, if that's of any interest, which is the latest language model we have available to us. But of course you can do all this at home, so this is very much a stopgap to use the space while we're waiting for our real presenter.
So what have you been dying to ask ChatGPT?
So can it write a regex expression for checking email addresses?
Let's ask it.
Are we capturing the screen on the video feed?
Oh, there's quite a lot there. Right.
That was a direct input.
So I know what this question was getting at, and I've seen the long regex that you're talking about. So let's see if this one's good. It looks all right. I mean, we've got an @ sign in there. We've got a dot.
So can you turn that into a Python function?
Yeah, okay. Let's ask it to put that.
Is it please important?
We're losing the right-hand edge. Can you shrink it slightly?
Oh, okay. Let me see. Oh, in fact, what I can do is I'll just zoom out a bit. There we go. So that looks sensible to me, right? That's that regex. We're doing an RE match. Yeah. And we've got an input being taken in from our text. This is Python 3. Looks like it's fairly well explained.
Can we ask it to tell us about artificial intelligence? That's what our speaker was going to.
Oh, okay. It tells us a lot. Artificial intelligence is a branch of computer science that focuses on creating intelligent machines that can perform tasks that normally require human intelligence, such as recognizing speech, making decisions, solve problems, and learning. AI is based on the idea of creating algorithms and systems that can simulate human cognitive abilities and behaviors. Okay.
Quite an essay, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
Ask it to summarize that in layman's terms.
Okay. Creating machines that can do things that normally require human intelligence. Yeah, sounds good.
Sorry I'll come to the front. Slight mix-up on the timetable. The guy giving the talk is about 10-15 minutes away. So if you want to get a drink, a cup of coffee, get a snack, whatever, we're not going to start until probably 25 past.
ChatGPT will not be insulted.
Yeah. There you go.
And if anyone's got more questions they want to ask ChatGPT, we can keep on
until
filling the time. Choice is yours.
What code does it run on?
What code does it run on? Great question. Secret hardware.
Secret code.
So it's not publicly disclosed. There's an API, and we can access the API using Python, JavaScript, and other programming languages, so that's okay.
Can you ask it what a TPU is?
Oh yeah, what is a TPU? I think. Tensor processing unit.
Ah.
Thanks so much for coming and helping out.
Specific machine learning programming.
Yeah. So like a graphics card, but for machine learning
Yeah.
tasks.
Interesting.
When we run this stuff at home, we're typically running it on our graphics cards.
Yeah.
But if you were doing it for a job,
So that's what
maybe
those
you'd want
Google
something-
TensorFlow sticks are about.
Makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And yeah, you can buy those.
Yeah, yeah, I've seen them as products, but wasn't sure what you got. It's obviously a different type of processor.
Can we take the title of the previous talk, is the Raspberry Pi Pico a computer?
Great question.
After, for sure. Yeah, they do. They all tried to stay because they didn't want to.
We're asking ChatGPT questions from the audience.
Oh, that's okay. Very good.
So that people could experience AI whilst we wait for the Experience AI talk.
Yes, it's a computer, but it's not a traditional computer because it doesn't have.
Oh, I like the style.
Okay, so that's interesting because Jonathan was making the distinction about the way that you interface with the machine as to whether it was a computer or not. I think that's a very personal question, isn't it?
Yeah, whereas here is talking about
like
the power.
I like the idea that this is how we can tell a microcontroller apart from, or an embedded system apart from a computer, and that's the only distinction.
Because processing power is just a historical thing. I mean, the Pico is more powerful than what we used to call computers.
And there's no doubt, I think, in ChatGPT's mind that it is in fact a computer. So is a microcontroller a computer? Yes, it's a special sort of computer, so that's fine.
Gives very verbose answers, doesn't it?
Oh yeah, yeah. And so you can see some of the things I've been asking it since I've been using it. This is logged into my account, so I kind of use it as
It's like a search
as
engine.
Google, basically.
Yeah.
Like I don't know if anyone as old as I am, remembers when Google first came along, and you would actually be able to type the thing that you wanted to know into Google, and like the top hit would be a web page that tells you all about that thing, and you didn't need to be very specific about the thing, as long as it was like I don't know what color is a 10k resistor, you would be able to find that out from the top hit on Google almost reliably, and these days I don't think Google is that good. You get all kinds of weird ad spam and stuff like that.
You appear to be looking at resistors. How about this Amazon link? Yeah.
Whereas ChatGPT not only can answer those questions, but can also give me some context around the answers, so I know if it's saying something sensible or not. And I would never have been able to ask Google this question that I was asking ChatGPT. So I've got a Nerf gun, and I want to make an electric trigger for the Nerf gun. Like a hair trigger, where I press a micro switch, and that then sets some kind of firing sequence in motion to release the plunger on this Nerf gun. So I'm thinking, I assume this must be possible with basic electronics, I'm going to want something like a timer circuit or something. Well, I don't know how to do any of that, so I'll just get ChatGPT to do it for me. So I asked it exactly that.
Have you built the circuit to test it actually works?
Not yet.
Because we had an interesting case. A friend of mine online asked ChatGPT to give them a list of parts from Pimeroni that could enable them to build a robot for £50. And it gave a very plausible looking answer. But first of all, most of the products it listed are no longer sold by Pimeroni because, of course, ChatGPT's data is kind of cuts off about 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Secondly, the prices were completely made up. So the components it listed all existed in the past, and some of them you can still buy today, but Pimeroni didn't happen to be stocking them at the moment. But they were never sold at the prices that ChatGPT assigned to them. It had munged the prices to fit the budget so it could answer the question, but the actual answer was not
Yeah, I think that's something that you definitely need to bear in mind using this.
Yeah.
It might give you an idea about what the right answer might be. Like for this, it's telling me about a 555 timer. So I'm like, oh, okay, I can go and read about a 555 timer. I'm not just going to go and buy the parts that ChatGPT is telling me to do. I can use this as like a sort of a knife edge into the door to work out what I should be doing for things that I know nothing about. So that's how I'm using it, as a guide around things. But I also use it for work things. Like I've got this here where I wanted to know stuff that was going to be in the man page of the bind domain name server. But I didn't want to read through that man page. And I also wanted to know things that weren't necessarily going to be readily accessible from the man page. Like I might have been able to work it out, but really I wanted to know what the behaviour was in certain cases. It's a slightly sort of a cross-section of a question rather than something that a man page is designed to answer. So firstly I say describe the format of this file, this record, but then I was able to, later on, I was able to ask what happens if there are multiple records included for this same value? What's the behaviour? And that's a very hard question to Google or to get from a man page, but it's been able to tell me about what the specification states would happen. It's then been able to further clarify what happens in the particular example of this software, because it's just got access to the internet and it can do all those Google searches for me effectively. You know, that's what it's really doing, is it's processing this huge corpus of text to pick out the information that I'm actually curious about. Have we got the real speaker? Fantastic.
We've had ChatGPT taking questions from the audience to experience AI as a kind of warm-up act. So
absolutely not. We could never replace you. Let me go ahead and give you.
Do you want to
stage?
clip that onto your
Yeah, totally, Mike.
audio? And I will.
Can we stop the recording? Yeah. Okay, but no, we weren't recording anyway. Fantastic.
I was. It's still recording.
Okay, right.
Okay.
Cool.
That's fine.
Thank you very much. Okay, do you want to?
Morning, afternoon now, everybody. Sorry I'm so late. Calendar snafu, totally my fault. I own up to the whole thing. Stay inside the box. Sweet, I can do that. Cool, how's it going? I'm Mark. Around the Raspberry Pi Foundation, I'm known as Mr. C. I do a lot of the edge case stuff. So when people ask me, what do you do for the Raspberry Pi Foundation? I tend to dodge bullets and fight fires. So they send me out to places to teach in weird contexts, places where it might be difficult to sort of do any sort of coding stuff with kids. I work with traveller communities. I work with people like kids who are illiterate, can't read. We work with places where there's low, no tech, like scout huts and things like that. And we solve those sorts of problems. We overcome the barriers. And DeepMind came to the Raspberry Pi Foundation about 8 months ago and said, we've got this pot of cash that's burning a hole in our pocket. Can you get a bunch of your guys to make some resources that will expand the idea of artificial intelligence to young people around the country? Get them the idea that AI is not just, as it appears from the outside, for rich, white, middle-class guys. It should be for everybody. And so DeepMind's whole deal is to make that happen. And so they came to us and said, all we want you to do is increase participation in AI, get young people to understand more about what it is, and especially what it is not. So you've seen ChatGPT, right? I use ChatGPT literally every day, all the time. It's a tab that is always open in my browser because it's useful for everything, literally everything. I was going around at the end of last year doing research events in schools to try and determine things about our demographic, young people aged 11 to 13 who are going to participate in this challenge. We were asking them questions about AI, and I was showing classroom teachers and kids ChatGPT. And so the way I would introduce ChatGPT is I would say, right, everybody, what is your topic at school this term? And the kid would go, Jack the Ripper. And I'd go, great, how big's the essay your teacher wants you to write? And they'd go, 1,500 words, watch this, right? And the kids would just go, oh my God. And the teachers would be doing it just the same. What is happening, right? How do we now assess children? Lots of the discussions we've been having off the back of the Experience AI Challenge are what is learning? What is memory, right? Because we call this thing machine learning. Does the machine learn? Some people would tell you no, it processes ones and zeros, but other people, educational psychologists, would tell you that if you adapt your behavior based on new information, that's learning, right? So are these machines learning? We have people talking about sentience. We have a whole deal, and all of our content, we were so hard on ourselves all the way through. Do not anthropomorphize the AI. If you don't know what that big, massive word means, it means don't make it feel like a human. It's not. Don't give it a human personality. It doesn't have one. Okay? It is literally ones and zeros that process information and look for patterns. And if kids start thinking it's people, if they start thinking things that it's not, then we're going to start getting problems around what we're building with AI. We've already got these concerns about AI might be this big dangerous thing that's happening. If we start treating it like a person instead of understanding it as an objective thing that people make, that is a tool that users like us create, that other people interact with, okay? I could get a hammer from that workshop and in here, and I could absolutely do some really horrible things, right? Things that nobody should be doing with a hammer, but we don't take hammers away from everybody. Lots of people want to take AI away from kids, and if we can have them understand that this is a tool, and it's about how you use the tool that is important, we can change the way those AIs are being created. And really important with this one is that we increase participation. So DeepMind wanted loads of young people from all underrepresented backgrounds to come and have a go with AI, and so we built this thing, which is the Experience AI Challenge. So what will I create? The whole thing, there are two halves to Experience AI, by the way. One of them is the school half. So another team of my colleagues created a bunch of resources, 6 lessons in a row that you can teach in school that go through all the concepts around AI and machine learning with bias, everything involved, everything young people need to know about what AI is and how it works. This is about applying that understanding to make something with AI. So I didn't do the boring school part. I was a terrible student. I hated school. So what the Raspberry Pi Foundation, my whole deal is engagement first. They bring me on to create projects where you need to entertain kids and slide the learning in under the radar. So they didn't know we taught them anything. They just think this is an amazingly cool thing. I'm going to dive in and make wild stuff. And suddenly they're developing skills and having a really good time, right? But if you put the really good time at the forefront, it doesn't feel like school. So we've got the Experience AI Challenge, and this is the Music Quest. So the Music Quest is where we get young people to write a program in Scratch, build a model on machine learning for kids, hook that into a Scratch project that then polls the Spotify API, searches through genres of music and returns tracks in that genre, and allows you to click a sprite in your project to classify that. That's for one of my pump-up playlists. This is for my heartbreak playlist, right? You get all these songs coming back, you start classifying it based on the playlist you want, you're training a machine learning model by listening to music on Spotify. Then you build another Scratch project in stage 4. Stage 4 of the 5-stage process is you build the second one, which then takes your trained machine learning model, pulls songs off Spotify and compares them. You say, I want a pump-up playlist, please, Scratch, and it goes, sweet. It goes, checks on Spotify, pulls a song back, goes, nah, doesn't work, nope, nope. Yeah, that one fits, and it starts building you a playlist of however many songs you want. Yeah? So the path is here. It's got 5 projects in it. So we go all the way through the design thinking process. That's fully authentic. The kids work on the entire design thinking process from empathize, plan, design, ideate, test, iterate. Yeah, they go through that whole process, step at a time. They think about their user, and there's lots of opportunities for building something that has social good baked in. We offer it to the kids. You could say, who is your user? It doesn't have to be you. There's opportunities to make something that can search for music that will help people who are hearing impaired. Get them to train a model that says, this is too loud, this messes with my hearing aids, whatever it is. You can do stuff where you can only return music from specific markets in the world. You can return music from genres you have never heard before, right? It's all up to you how you apply this thing that polls Spotify. At the end, the young people submit their work to us. They submit both of their Scratch projects and a machine learning model card, which explains the machine learning model they built. It explains the data set they built about it. It tells us that they understand the thing that they have done. And that's looked at by a panel of experts from the Pi Foundation and from DeepMind, which is now Google DeepMind. So now they're out to make money as well instead of just do interesting research. And we're going to have a thing where those people look over the kids' work and we shortlist a bunch of entries. If your entry gets shortlisted, you get to come to an event inside DeepMind next year sometime. Okay, so that's what the Experience AI Challenge is. We've got all the resources. They're going to be launched in September. We're piloting at the moment with code clubs, schools, and community groups all over the country. They're running it in different formats for us. So the whole thing was designed to be incredibly flexible. You can just deliver it in a code club an hour a week and have the kids do stuff in between if you want. You can deliver it all in a single day as a hackathon if you want. The kids get a little workbook that they work through, and the leader, you, the adult who wants to run the session, gets another book called the Mentor Guide, which is basically all the cheat sheets for it. So we learned a long time ago that when we teach these things, the people who run these, especially in the edge context that I work in, community centers with low SES kids, kids who can't read, kids who don't want to code, right? Like they're the kids I want. If they're the kids who are already coding, I've got them. The hard to reach kids are hard to reach, and we had to make something that was engagement first. It had to be Spotify up the front, talk about playing music, doing this thing, messing with AI and machine learning, and take all the scariness out. And a lot of the adults who are leading this stuff, they also are not techie. They run a community center, and some kids have said, we want to do coding, miss, and they've gone, great, okay, I know nothing about it, but I'm going to help you. So the Mentor Guide All of these sessions that the kids have, the mentor guide has every step of the way. It says, if your kid's thing doesn't look like this, here's where they've gone wrong. It gives you the answers, the questions the kids were going to ask you in the classroom. It preempts any of the problems that the kids will have, and it explains all the difficult concepts and has phonetic pronunciation for things like anthropomorphization, right? So this is what we've built. I'm saying it's launching in September. If you're interested in having a look, I can send you a sneaky peeky link to the whole content. And you can have a look at it in your own time, but please, like, shh, don't tell everybody just yet. We haven't launched it. We're piloting, and there's been a bit of a soft launch. Cool to see you playing with ChatGPT. I use ChatGPT all the time. Another one that's really fun is, have you seen Firefly? Before we move on, okay, oh, hang on a sec. Anyway, okay, before we move on to doing the fun thing with this image generator, does anybody have any questions about the content that we've done on AI and machine learning? Anything you want to know further about that, or what we're planning to do in the future about it? No? Stunned silence. Cool, okay. So this is Firefly. This is Adobe's new image generator. You might have seen ones like Crayon and DALL-E, Midjourney. Yeah, Midjourney is my absolute favorite, but it's not free anymore. But that was the most powerful one. You could do really cool stuff with prompt engineering. And so the reason I bring up this text-to-image generator is because prompt engineering is going to be the next thing in coding, right? The idea of natural language programming, the idea that you can just say what you want to a machine, the machine spits it back. Yeah, so you don't have to write code in Python. You just say to a machine that interprets the words that you want, and that's what this is at its core. Text-to-image generation is prompt engineering where you can immediately see the result of the things that you're doing. Firefly is cool, it's not the best one. Midjourney is best because you can weight stuff inside your prompts. So you can say all of these things I'm giving you. So you might say, what was I doing the other day? So I use it a lot for Dungeons & Dragons. I generate art for my Dungeons & Dragons campaign using this thing all the time. Last week, my party went to a gnome rave, and I was making like photos of this gnome rave. So you can have it do whatever you want. Where is my... oh yeah, okay, so here's one. Right, so these are all off of the same prompt with slightly different things weighted. So this one here, I told it I wanted more portal, and you see the portal becomes much more in the front. I weighted that. I told it out of 100 scales, I want my portal to have 80 points, and I want the guy in the front to have like 40 points, right? Focus on the portal for me. That's what prompt engineering is. That's what weighting is. And you'll start hearing a lot more about it as young people start working in these tools that can interpret what they want, instead of them having to write rules of things that it has to follow, yeah? And then saying, I want you to weight this more, think about this less. Lots of people tell you that's not programming, but giving a machine specific instructions in order to get the specific output that you want sounds like programming to me.
Yeah, it just makes it very accessible.
Makes it super accessible.
Creative kind of subset of the population.
Interesting, right? So now teachers don't think that way. Teachers tend to think like, oh my God, what, like kids are going to have all the answers suddenly. But it was the same thing they said about the internet, right? In the 90s, it's the same thing they said about calculators in the 70s, right? My maths teacher used to tell me, oh, you have to know how to do all this stuff because you're not going to be carrying a calculator around every day in your pocket. How'd that work out, Mr. Kassane? Right? So this sort of thing here, I think the accessibility is a big thing for me. Again, as a teacher, like you can probably tell about me, I was a terrible student, right? Like if you were a teacher, you would have hated my guts. Like I could get good grades, but I did zero work and I was a massive smartass. And that's because I was all about engagement. If it wasn't interesting or it didn't empower me in some way, it was like, why am I learning this? If you could tell me why I cared, I could do it, right? It was worth jumping through the hoops. This takes all the hoops away. They're just gone. It's just, what do you want, right? Like literally, like think of anything that you want. It'll probably handle my typo too. Right? And then, so from that, like you tell it that that's cool, and then I can apply these sorts of filters, like let's make it synthwave, and then here I want you to add some neon lines. Okay, so it won't like that so much. Regenerate. Right, so synthwave is a filter that it puts over the top. Oh, I've spelled neon wrong, but it'll handle that. Yeah, and then you can ask it to do styles of different artists. Like, let's say you like, who did all the Heinlein covers? Can't remember. Or, you know, any of those artists that you like. If you want to do it in the style of Picasso, right? Like,
given that it's natural language processing, could you ask it to do it in the style of the artist who did all the Highline covers?
You might be able to actually. Let's see. I know you could tell it that if you wanted to, because the other day I was doing it, I was asking it to try and produce me like 50s pin-up style bomber nose art. Do you know what I mean? Like on the old World War II bombers, they had those pin-up style art things. And so I was adding prompts to it like 50s style, all this stuff. Yeah, see, it didn't do that. What will it give me? We'll see. But yeah, and you've seen like photorealistic stuff. You saw the photo of the Pope in the puffer jacket. Yeah.
With intellectual rights, because for example, you ask to create something from start, right? And this start just can have it.
Yeah, it'll do that. So there are things that it blocks. It won't let you use profanity, and it stops you using violent terms. Like if I asked it for like guns, it would probably go, I can't do that. If you asked it for like a battle scene, it would go, I can't do that. But as for the rights on other people's IP, I mean, like, let's test it. Like, give me an example. Let's test it and see what it does. You know, like, okay, yeah. So let's see what we get. And then that's the other thing too. So ChatGPT is really fun, and I use it again for Dungeons and Dragons. Like I can tell it, like, okay, so my party is going into the desert. Spit me out. Yeah. See, so you don't exactly get Mickey Mouse, right? Let's see how much we can be more specific.
Right, Disney.
See, there you go. Right, so it'll be because the word Disney is in there. So if I get rid of that, it didn't like Steamboat Willie either. See, but it'll give you Mickey Mouse, which is interesting.
But it just pulled the mouse. It wasn't Mickey Mouse.
That's it. It's not actually Mickey Mouse, and maybe that's how it gets around it, right? Like, and that's it. And I spend a lot of time red teaming AI programs on the internet. So ChatGPT is a really fun one to red team, which is where you sit there and try and, yeah, where you sit there and you attack it. Like you poke the bear to see if you can get it to do things it's not supposed to do. You try and break it. Yeah.
Can you repeat it by using quotes?
Let's see. That is an interesting point. And that's the thing, I haven't played with Firefly much. That's probably why I'm showing you this one, because it's like my newest toy. There are other ones that I have, like you can join Discords for them, and you literally just type into the Discord, I want this, and it spits you back the image that you want. You can get variations on that image. They're popping up everywhere. But no, it doesn't look like it gave you specific Mickey Mouse stuff.
Is it susceptible to prompt injection attacks? Can you get it to pretend copyright isn't a thing?
This one, no.
Without context?
So
Yeah.
Adobe's one is very locked down because it's Adobe. And they've trained it on their own image sets and things like that. Because you saw recently, who was it? Might have been Midjourney actually, got busted because one of the images that it generated had the Getty Images watermark in it, because it had been trained obviously on Getty watermarked images. So that was an issue. But when you look at like this is Adobe's one, so I imagine they would have no Disney content in the thing that had trained the model. So you won't get Disney content back. I imagine if you did like a bit of a prompt play with it, you could do it, but this one again is very locked down. Other ones, like the Chinese AI generators, they do not care about copyright in any way. They don't care. Like they just shred the internet for resource, and no one's stopping them. And you can get to those. They're the best ones on Discord. Is the Chinese ones that like don't care about what it costs you. They don't give you credits. They just go like, have at it, boys. And then they use the images that you generate to retrain the image, like the image model. So that's their benefit. Plus, they get to stick it to Google. Yeah, that's it, and that's that iterative cycle that they get. As it produces input, and you say that was good, or you keep those, they get stats that goes people like this trains the model, hones it in. Yep.
This is not just a giant database using keywords.
No, it's not. So it's interesting.
Collecting data and then you're sourcing it.
So that, yeah, kind of, right? And you can see it like that on the outside as though it's like that sort of black box, but that's not really what it's doing. So.
I see your first illustration of taking actions, and then or your Spotify one where you're taking the music and putting it into genres. A, you've got the problems: is the music correctly have the right genre against it? And B, bring it in a big database. But that's just
So they're two very different things. So the Spotify database is a database like you're talking about. Every song in the Spotify database contains a bunch of audio features data about that song. So the song contains things like the obvious ones like tempo, right? Loudness, like what else does it have? They have some of the really cool ones are like speechiness, right? So how much of it is talking versus how much of it is instrumental, which is the alternate to that. They have valence, which is it happy or sad music, and all of that is stored in this massive Spotify database.
The danceability as well.
Danceability, yeah, absolutely. That's another, which I don't understand how that's objective, but
The point at which I thought it might become somewhat like AI is if you took all those choices of music and then it worked out which is your preference.
that's what it does.
At that point,
That's exactly what it
becomes
does.
more than just,
So
but it's still a giant database.
no, it's not. Spotify is the database. And the kids build a machine learning model which they then train on their preferences based on that Spotify data.
Oh, the database is Spotify, but it could be any other database.
It could be any database, yep.
Yeah. So this is just the input side.
Yeah, but they have a machine learning model which they're training, right? So the Scratch project brings music from the Spotify database into their Scratch project. They hear that music and they click the sprite in the project that feeds the machine learning model and trains it.
Actions are taking place within the AI portion of this.
Yep, okay.
Front end, if you like.
I hear you. So from there, so from the Spotify, when they're classifying and labeling music into classes on their model, so they build 4 classes into their model. One of them is pump up for their pump up playlist. One of them is study time. One of them is heartbreak, for example. Those are the 3 playlists that you've set up in your machine learning model, and you train that model on your preferences for what each of those is. So you sit there feeding data from that database through your Scratch project into your machine learning model. That machine learning model collates a huge pile of data on the music you have heard. It doesn't know what song that is. It just knows that this data, this feels to me like a pump-up track, and that's where the machine learning part is. So the machine learning model has all of your preferences.
You all it feels like.
So that's where I'm going now.
I need to know how it feels like.
Oh, well then you need a doctorate in AI, because even the guys who are building it at DeepMind don't know how it works. So a lot of it is considered black box, right? You've heard the term black box AI? Most AI is black box. So what it does, the best way you can describe it is, like I see why it feels like you just have a massive database, or we're polling as a huge database, and that's what good old-fashioned AI is.
I mean, you can form a lookup key to access a
But that's not what it's doing.
genre.
You can do that, but imagine building the rules for that system. Endless rules for that system.
Actually, and I'm not software person.
But it wouldn't predict.
It's never
Exactly.
trained on that match the rules. That's the.
Imagine building the rules for the song that says this song fits.
Are you just looking them up?
But that's not what it's doing. So what it's doing, so the model pulls the songs.
On the basis of their keys, whether it's a genre which is brass bands or orchestral or whatever, and that is just it announced.
But there's lots of brass band music, and half of it I probably won't like. How will the machine know I like it?
Because you will have chosen it, and eventually it realizes, and this is where I said earlier, it becomes a little bit like AA when it starts to work out which ones you prefer.
Yes.
And that's just a question of counting up.
No.
You account and say, you chose brass bands 20 times, but you chose orchestras once.
But the thing is, inside that brass band genre, that's true, and it could send me a brass band song, but how will it know I like that song?
Mine can be broken down ad infinitum, actually.
Absolutely, it could, but imagine trying to build the rules for that system.
No, I don't see it. It's the same rule.
Okay, so what the machine learning algorithm then does is to jump off that, because I feel like we're going in circles. If we go to what the machine learning algorithm does, yeah, it takes all of that data and it does pattern recognition, right? It generates a pattern and says, does this song fit this pattern? If it fits the pattern it has generated across your entire database, it goes, that works. If it doesn't, it goes, this doesn't fit this sort of pattern. And I get that that sounds fuzzy, because it is.
It sounds like everything else.
Yeah, it is fuzzy, right? And that's the thing. Even the guys at DeepMind, when we said to them, how do you explain how that thing does the pattern recognition? They're like, if you can explain it to us, we would love to hear it, right? So they're building the things, and they don't really, it almost sounds like it can't be true, right? Like they're building these things that work, but they don't know how they're doing it. That's pretty much what's happening with these huge compute machines. They feed them billions and billions and billions of data points, and how it generates that image for you based on those things, they're kind of like, works, right?
Do we
Yeah.
also have photorealistic image generators
Yep.
coming along?
Absolutely, yep. If you into that one, if you just give Firefly the terms photorealism, I think it's actually a filter you can apply to the thing.
Can I turn the question around and say, how did it decide that those were the images that you wanted?
Exactly like that. It generates them based on the patterns that it assumes, right? So when you look at what ChatGPT is doing, it's what's called a stochastic parrot. So it doesn't generate anything. It just predicts what the most likely next word in any given sentence will be based on the parameters that you've given it. It's all about probability and prediction. And so it predicts, based on the prompts I have given it, that this, based on things that are associated with these prompts, something like this is probably what you're looking for.
If you're talking predictive text.
Same with the images. It looks at a bunch of images. It's been trained on huge data pools of images.
Right. I mean, if I write a reply to somebody, it will actually predict the words I want because I've used them previously.
That's right, but this doesn't do that. That's not how this operates. So you can do that with weightings, and you can tell it pay more attention to these as though you have used this term many more times. It would be the same as writing the term 50 times in the search, right? You say weight at 50 rather than typing at 50, which you could do. That's a similar thing to predictive text. But predictive text, again, is not really, in this sense, of machine learning. It doesn't go to some cloud machine learning model and go, what are the words that you specifically use? That's all localized stuff, right? That's on your phone. Whereas the thing that these kids are doing is it's going out to a trained learning model on the cloud and predicting something that they've never seen before. That it's not anything that is in their database. It is outside the machine's knowledge, but it can assume that it fits that pattern, and so it says this is okay knowledge. Do you know what I mean? It's not something it already knows, but it can take new knowledge and approve it as a class based on the pattern of that class. It's really hard to explain. Trying to explain it to an 11-year-old was like nearly impossible. No, like, and that's the thing. And like, I love having these discussions because it's kind of like we sat down and had these discussions with the guys in DeepMind, right? And they were the same discussion that you and I are having now. Like, and we were sitting there going, but how does it do it? And they're like, it follows patterns. And we're like, yeah, okay, but how does it do that? And they're like, well, it's got all this data. And we're like, yeah, that's great, but how does it get the pattern from the data? And they're like, it just does.
Mental patterns are interesting things even for humans. The way that I mean, a lot of AI, original ones were neural networks.
Right.
Trying to model the way that the human brain triggers patterns going through the brain.
And that's...
I mean, as an example, I grew up in Sheffield and I was trying to remember a while ago the name of a street. And I couldn't remember it. And eventually what came up was Norfolk Street. And I knew it wasn't right. But when I looked it up, it was actually called Arundel Gate. Now, Arundel in Sussex is the home of the Dukes of Norfolk. So
and that's how your brain drew the link.
Stored as
Yeah.
ARUN. It was stored as something that somehow matched.
And that's...
Against a street sign, a castle.
That's a really interesting allegory, actually. Yeah, that's a really interesting allegory for what it's doing.
So trying to explain how the human brain does that is difficult enough.
So that's essentially but what you've just described there is kind of like what the machine learning model does, right? Because it has all of these disparate bits and pieces, and it goes, these are the bits I know, here's the pattern I understand. Does this work with this pattern? Yes or no? This thing I do not understand, or can I get something else, or can I generate something that will fit this pattern? Yes, I can. Right? And so that's what it's doing with these image generators. If you think of ChatGPT, when you ask it to write me a poem in the style of Dr. Seuss about smelly feet, it goes, okay, poem, I understand that means these things. Dr. Seuss, he's written all this stuff. I'll have a look at all that. That's all the knowledge I have on that. Smelly feet, here's a bunch of stuff around that, right? Including the medical term for it, whatever that might be. Reports on it from doctors from the 20s. All sorts of stuff. Whatever the model has, it will pull that info and it can make you something. It will go, and it mushes it all together and goes, so you want something kind of like that. That should fit the pattern you want. And it spits you out the poem. And you watch ChatGPT do it, and what it's doing is predicting the next word in the sentence. Based on this thing I've just written, what's the most likely next word? That's all it's doing with every next word. What's the most likely next word every single time? Right? And people think they're smart. People think that they learn. People think that they understand, but they don't. There's a really great video I reckon you should have a look at if you're into AI. It's on YouTube. It's by Adam Conover, if you know who Adam Conover is. Like Adam Ruins Everything. Yeah, very smart man. And he sits down and says that there's this fear around AI at the moment, and people are trying to jam AI into places it doesn't belong. So when you're looking at people putting AI into search engines, the way they've done that with ChatGPT, trying to feed that into a search engine, those two things don't mesh properly. Like, that's not what it's supposed to be for. You could build a large language model that will help you do search, but that's not what ChatGPT does. That's not what it was designed to do, but they're cramming it in. And it gives you a really good explanation of why companies are trying to do this at the moment, and it's going to be to our detriment in the future when we've like misapplied all of these really powerful tools and people have got completely the wrong idea about what they actually are and what they should be doing. So that was a big part of what we were trying to do here when we talk about these resources. Like I say, all the resources are free. Everything we do, the resources are free and always will be. If you're an adult with a kid at home, we're working with homeschoolers, we're working with youth groups, community centres. If you work with a code club or anything and you want your young people to be able to submit, it's all free, submission is free, and if you win, we'll take you to DeepMind's offices and you can poke their robots and stuff. Cool? I'm like around all day too, so if you bump into me and you want to have a chat about it, like just say hi. I'm running workshops this afternoon. I'll be doing one on one of the AI projects that we've got on here, and another one I'll be doing is on the Raspberry Pi Pico.
Is there a short URL people can remember to find these materials?
No, there's not at the moment. We haven't launched them, so if you want them, give me your email and I can send you a link to the stuff, because it's not actually like out for public consumption yet, but if you want to see it, if you want to have a play with it at home, you're very welcome. Cool? Any last minute questions? Yep.
Write the link down for me.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, totally.
Regarding code clubs, I run one, but I'm at primary level, so I'm doing this term year 4 to 6.
Yep.
Is this probably a bit too much for them, do you think?
No, I mean, DeepMind asked us specifically to get kids 11 to 13, but one of the parameters that we set on these sorts of things is that you have to be able to participate having had no coding experience before. So no, they don't need to be. The instructions are all there step by step, and like I say, the mentor guide, every single step of the way, it says this is what your kid's code should look like, here's what you should be reminding them of, save your work, all those things. It's all backed up for you, so you should be able to run it. Give me an email, I can write down the link for you now if you've got a pen and paper. Cool.
Okay, we need to wrap up there time-wise.
Okay, no worries, that's cool. I'll have a chat with you after if you want.
Thank you
Cool.
very much.
No, my pleasure. Sorry I was late, everybody. I apologise.